Hey everyone, we're going to get started in a minute here. I'm still setting up the second camera. So give me a moment and we will make this. Okay, 1 second. I think that works. All right, we're going to get going here, my friends. We're going to get going. I want to pull up Amazon Live so I can see what people are saying. Maybe chewed live. Where is it? Okay, there's that one. Okay. Whew. So warm in here. All right. Excuse me. Okay, I'm going to mute and I will be back.
Why not maximize your podcast by live streaming it? That's the topic Christoph Trapp discusses on the Going Live podcast, which is the companion show to the book of the same title. Join Christoph for today's episode, and don't forget to order the book on Amazon today.
Hey, how is everyone doing? Thanks for joining another live stream here. We are live on Amazon, LinkedIn, everywhere else. And check this out. Today, we're going to have two angles. Super cool how that's set up. Not sure we need the second angle, but take a look. So that's the camera over there. So I can talk to you over there. You can see my whole body. Not sure why you would want to, but just to show you how easy it is to have multiple angles. And maybe, honestly, what I'll do is I'll just do it like this. So you can see what's going on. You can see me on both screens. And, we'll go from there. Today's episode of this podcast, I want to talk about what should you name your live stream. Of course, we're live on all the different channels. Looks like people are tuning in. Really appreciate you guys for that, of course. But this section in the book, I talk about what should you name your live stream. And in reality, here's what you should be doing. Your live stream should have the same name as your podcast. So anybody out there overthinking this thing and thinking that you should be, that you should have a special name for the live stream, no. Just use your podcast name. This is the Business Storytelling Podcast. Well, this isn't, but this is the Going Live Podcast, the Going Live live stream. The intro that you heard me play at the beginning for the live stream is exactly the same intro as it is on the podcast. Now, of course, as you might imagine, the podcast, it's kind of growing, right? It's brand new. Hardly anybody knows about it yet. But I still think it's a good idea to have a podcast for your book. The last book, there were about 1,000 downloads. So I really could not complain at all. I appreciate everybody who was paying attention, who was tuning in and whatnot. So definitely something to keep in mind. Podcast, live stream, they go together. And I stand by that story. I really do. Why wouldn't I do a live stream, of my podcast? So today we want to talk about the chapter that's called What to Name Your Live Stream. And at the end of the day, your live stream should have the same name as your podcast. Maybe at the end, don't say podcast, but say live stream. But that's it. We don't have to overthink it. We don't have to do anything like that. We want to have some brand consistency. You still want to take a look, see who else is out there doing similar things. I did a search for Going Live, for the trademark, for other podcasts. And there is actually one podcast that hasn't done anything. in like 2 or 3 years. So chances are they're not going to come back in the game, right? Are other people live streaming about going live? Probably. A little meta. LinkedIn actually tells me you're not supposed to talk about meta topics on LinkedIn. So hopefully I'm not going crosshairs on anybody here over on LinkedIn. But that's what my book is about, going live. So when it comes to the name, though, what's interesting for me to remember is I'm horrible with names like that. I'm horrible with names for blogs. I'm horrible with, all those kind of things. I need to collaborate. I need to come to a meeting. I'm not saying we need any more meetings, but that is one where a meeting really can be helpful, quite frankly. So just something to keep in mind. Know your strength, know your weaknesses. I'm pretty good in a collaborative environment, however. So just something to think about. If we can build on each other, we can brainstorm, we can come up with different ideas. I'm pretty good at that, but I'm not good at just sitting here or standing here. As you can see, I'm at my wonderful Veridesk. If you're watching live on any of the live channels, I'm not good at that. I'm not good at just brainstorming with myself. Certainly I can throw out some ideas, and that's it's just good to know. So something to think about. So then as we're talking about what to come up with for your name, trying to go back here. So I did write about this previously on authenticstorytelling.net, and then now I've turned that into a chapter in the book. So it's slightly a different angle than what the article was, but a few things to keep in mind. Keywords. What are the terms that people are searching for? What are the terms that people in your vertical use, and you want to have those terms in your name. If you don't have them in there, it's harder and harder for people to find them, right? So if you have an email marketing show, you want to have email marketing in there. If you do consumer insights or customer insights, that needs to be in the name. And when we launched the Real Talk over at Vox Pop Me, I hope you check that out. Real Talk, the customer insights show, crystal clear what it's about. Customer insights. It's not rocket science, right? So you got to have the name in there. Then you want to take a look at, is anybody else using that name already? And so if somebody else is using that name already, then can't use it. Now, going live with Christoph Trapp, certainly different from going live. Plus, that podcast isn't even talking about this topic. This topic, completely different topic. I'm talking about not just live streaming, even though I'm kind of wandering into that area more and more. For example, as Jeff Kozlowski, I was on his show, K-Stream, the other day, and he's a contributor in the book. We talked about Amazon Live, and I'm live streaming my vacuum cleaner. I'm live streaming me snowblowing. I'm doing some of those new, I live streamed the snowstorm, so I'm live streaming all those different things. And that's something to keep in mind, that's possible and that you can do that. But that's not truly what the book is about. The book is about how do you live stream your podcast. So if you are going to think about doing a podcast, don't just start a podcast. Start a live stream and a podcast and make that part of your overall strategy. And the reason that's important to think about like that is because we don't have enough time as it is. You launch a podcast, let's say you started, you might have, 20 listens, if you're lucky, 20 downloads, same thing. And then what's going to happen is people will say, well, is that worth it? I don't know, maybe not. But if you start a podcast, if you start a live stream, you will have more views on social media out of the gate because fewer people do live streams currently. So ask me again next year or in 2 years if that's still the case. But today, it's worth it. Now, so you got to look at that. Memorability. Can listeners remember your name? Going live is pretty simple. The Business Storytelling Podcast is pretty simple. Acronyms are not simple. Please keep that in mind. Acronyms, no. Don't use them. I know people do that, especially in the nonprofit world. Love their acronyms. I get it. United Way of East Central Iowa, UWECI. Personally, I find that super hard to remember, honestly. So keep that in mind. Make sure people can remember it. If people can't remember it, probably not a good name. You also want to remember and pick up. Interesting. So I got the Amazon version. It's on my computer, my PC. So she listens to me there. My iPad, and iPhone over there. This is my iPad right here. That's where I'm producing the show. And if it was somebody else, I would flip back and forth between the cameras, but it's just me. So I'm trying to kind of maximize what I'm doing, and I'm trying to share content with you guys instead of moving back and forth the camera angles, because it is a lot. It's a lot of work to do that by yourself. So, but keep those in mind. People have to be able to or not. If people can remember it, they can't say it. So just something to keep in mind. Make sure people can remember it, so then they can say it, and then the voice devices actually can hear you correctly. That's still a challenge sometimes, and they can also then play it back. So how do you get them on there? I don't know if there's another chapter on that or if we already talked about that, but basically, as long as your podcast is submitted to Amazon Music, it'll be on the Amazon voice assistant. As long as it's on Apple Podcasts, it'll be on the iOS assistant. So that's really how easy it is. It used to be much, much more difficult to do, but that's how it works. Today, sometimes at the end, when you say the name, you have to say podcast. So if you say, hello, Amazon Assistant, please play Real Talk Customer Insights Show. Doesn't do it. You have to add podcast at the end, which is fine for now because, Amazon Music plays music. Alexa plays music. So, sorry. Never mind, Alexa. And so...
Sorry, I'm having trouble. Please try it in a little while.
So basically, you just have to say that at the end. That's another reason why it can't be too long, quite frankly. Brainstorming a name. So this is Helena Pawlicki. She's a rock star audio creator over there in Germany, the Rheinische Post. She reiterated the importance of collaboration. The names of our podcasts usually come from brainstorming in a group in the newsroom. With each of the podcasts, whenever we were confident about the concept, we would sit down shortly before launch and think about names. Sometimes we'd ask all of our coworkers to send us names and mail them around in a small group. Her tips: names should be clever and original. Names should not be taken by anything else. Names should reflect the concept of the podcast. Name should be easily understood, easy to remember, and easy to say out loud. No terrible puns. That's what she said. So some brands like terrible puns. I'm not sure terrible puns are terrible. I like puns in general. So just something to think about. What's your brand? What works for you? Amanda Milligan, she's the host of the Content Cashing In on Content Marketing podcast. A great show. I hope you check it out. And basically, she did something very similar. And she actually asked all employees at Fractal to see if they had ideas. And then they basically came up with it that way. But you do have to explain to people what the show is about. What are you going to talk about? What's the topic, et cetera, et cetera. Be clear and on brand. That's Christina Podnar in the Power of Digital Policy podcast. I've just went back on that not too long ago to talk about going. I'm not sure how long mine is, but keep it short so people can read it. Of course, if it's an extension of your business, make sure that's a good starting point. Don't go crazy on keyword. And the other thing is, if you do go crazy on keywords, Apple does remove your podcast from the platform. This is still from Christina, I think. Come up with a slew of taglines or names, print them out, tape them around your house, see which ones resonate with you after a few days and which ones are just kind of blah. A CEO I worked with, Peter Stamates Communication in Cedar Rapids, he was always a big fan of sleeping on something. And, sometimes we can just make a decision and move forward. But this is one too. I'm not necessarily a big fan of putting things on the wall on sticky notes, anything handwriting related. Not a fan of that at all. So I would probably just kind of put them, in a Word doc or something, even though I got some scratch paper. But I hardly ever look at my scratch paper. It's really just for me to write it down, because writing it down helps you, right, to just remember it. So that's kind of what I do. But then I think about it. What do I like? What don't I like? And then, we'll go back and see what we want to do. Jason Falls, he also has a new book out, Winfluence. I hope you check that out. Naming a podcast can be easier when it's a brand extension. I struggle with this one and even named mine the Jason Falls Show for a while. I hated it because it's self-important and egotistical. Oh, I don't know if it is Jason or not, but certainly it is very tight to a personal brand. But when we transformed the podcast to be an agent of the agency, it became easier. We have core tenets of our business of doing right by the brand, loving the challenge, and digging deeper. We have posters with those sayings in their explanations all over the building, and our tagline, even trademarked, is we make creativity your business advantage. So digging deeper, make creativity your business advantage kind of became logical. What's interesting about that comment too from Jason is I listen to that show all the time. And I didn't even realize the subtitle was what it was. I just refer to it as digging deeper, and so interesting. How much energy should you put into coming up with a name? This is an interesting question because we don't have enough time as it is, right? Who has enough time? Here's the reality. Never met a marketing team that has enough time. You could always use more time. And sometimes the other thing I started to realize, my friends, is that sometimes it's not having more time, but using our time better. So I'll give you an example. When I have a lot of meetings, writing is actually really hard because every time you stop, you have to it takes a minute to get going again. So that's just something to keep in mind. Interesting how that works. But, I certainly have noticed that as well. And that's something I try to keep in mind my writers, to make sure they have time blocked off. Because at the end, and production too, producing these shows takes some time. It's taking less and less time because I'm getting better and better at it. But at the end of the day, it does take some time, So just something to keep in mind. So Nick Westergaard says you should definitely overthink the name of your podcast. It's a key piece of your show brand's DNA, and one that has implications for your feed, show notes, website, and potential sponsors. You want to be clear, concise, clever. Paint a picture of not only what your show is about, but what the tone is. For example, I wanted to establish that my podcast was a talk show about branding. Makes sense, and it is. It's an awesome show. Just listened to it this morning. In mulling over branding phrases, I thought of how much people talk about being on brand. This reminded me of the NPR show On Point and also Stephen King's book on writing. From here, I added one other key structural piece to establish the tone. Most talk shows include with. Makes sense. And the host's name. So I added with Nick Westergaard to make it clear what the show was and to build my brand as a host. And that's how On Brand with Nick Westergaard came about. Makes sense. Then being found your niche, Kennedy, marketing show. They make it fun, a little entertainment in there with those guys. They are a lot of fun, and they call and that's how they came up with that. Email marketing, easy to find them, and then show to make it a little bit more entertaining. So that's how they're doing it. Fred Faulkner, According to Fred podcast, also a great friend of mine, and I've been on that show before as well. He's live streaming his show using StreamYard, kind of like Jeff Kozlowski. He's using StreamYard as well for the K-Stream. I haven't used it other than being a guest. Seems to work fine. But again, we really, truly can't cover every piece of everything. Doesn't work, right? So just please keep that in mind. StreamYard is one you can try to use depending on how you're going to use it. I use Switcher on my iPad. You see it right here. Switcher wrote the Nick Mattingly. He's writing the forward to my book. Really appreciate him. Really appreciate Switcher, honestly, for the guidance over the last year here with my live streaming. Then I got the two phones tied together, and they're connected, and I can do all that on Switcher Studio here. And then finally, Restream. I do use Restream to push it to all the different are, we order LinkedIn, Amazon Live currently, Twitter, and then YouTube as well. And the reason I go to YouTube is it's not like I got a gazillion. I don't have a gazillion views on there, but I like to get on YouTube. I want to be on there. And when I do it live, now I'm already on there, like the end, right? We're done. I don't have to upload it again. It takes a while to process, so I have to add, like cards. That it takes about a day to process, which is kind of interesting. But so that's why I do that. Can you change your podcast name? Great question. Yes, you can. You can, and I have, because my business storytelling podcast at first was called Christoph Trapp, the Business Storytelling Podcast. And why does it need to be? Why does Christoph Trapp need to be there? Right? Makes no sense. So I cut that out, and then I also updated my cover art a bunch of times. For real, like probably 3 or 4 times. I'm probably on my 3rd or 4th cover now. And basically, it updates on all the different channels, but the old episodes sometimes don't update, and some channels are better than others. On Apple, not a big deal. Spotify, not a big deal. Google Podcasts, pain, doesn't update forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Takes forever. I don't know why. I've seen podcasts that change their cover art, and they still have the old cover art from like a year ago. I don't know why it's taken so long. Currently, I got a little bit of a problem on Google anyways, because it was pulling the Sprecher feed, which is interesting because I don't really use Sprecher. I do have an account on Sprecher, but I don't use it to distribute my podcast. So I deleted my Sprecher account, and, basically now I have to wait a little bit. I simply use Anchor when it comes to my podcast hosting, my podcast distribution. Anchor does most everything for free and automatically. So big fan. Some people call it the YouTube of podcasting. So what? I mean, all kinds of people make a go of it on YouTube. So why not? So the next session, the next episode will be about my setup here. You can see it today on the live stream, how I'm set up, how I use it. I also got an office treadmill over here, so I use that too. And I'll talk about that in the next episode. And then the episode after that will be about editorial planning. So we're about 55 pages into the book. Book is currently at 170 some pages. And, there you go. What I'm going to do now, my friends, is I'm going to just keep the cameras running. If you have any questions, let me know. And I can answer them on